know, diatonic scales have 7 notes. And we can actually count these notes with numbers. And we like to use these little hats above each number to indicate scale degree. A scale degree just means what member of the scale is it, counting from the tonic, from the first note. So in a C major scale, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then we get back up to 1. So we can say that in the C major scale, F is scale degree 4. B is scale degree 7. Someone could ask you, what is scale degree 3 of the C major scale? E natural. Now there's been lots of different ways of naming these scale numbers. We often in North America use movable do, where we use these syllables. So do is 1, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. There are also names that are kind of functional names for each of these notes. And I think I've mentioned the word tonic. The word tonic corresponds to scale degree 1. And tonic is a little bit deeper than just the first note of the scale. It is the home note of the scale. It's the note that the scale is based on. Pieces of music that revolve around this scale gravitate toward the tonic note. The next most important note in a scale is the 5th scale degree right here. This we call the dominant. And this is scale degree 5, sol, however you want to call it, that we call the dominant. The other notes also have names. Scale degree 2 is called the supertonic, not because it's a really powerful tonic, but because it's the note above the tonic. 3 is called the mediant, because it is halfway between 1 and 5, halfway between tonic and dominant. 4 is called the subdominant. Now it is called the subdominant not because it's the note underneath the dominant, the note right before the dominant, but actually because it's a 5th below the tonic. If you go up 5 notes from C, you get G, which is the dominant. If you go down 5 notes from C, you get F, which is the subdominant, the dominant below the tonic. There's a weird historical reason for that being called that. But that confusion will come up when you think about what 6 is called. 6 is called the submediant. Now again, this is not the note below the mediant. That would be scale degree 2. So it's the submediant because it's a 3rd down. If you start from C and go up 2 notes, you get the mediant. If you go down 2 notes, you get the submediant. And then finally, scale degree 7 is called the leading tone. And it's called the leading tone because it really strongly leads toward the tonic. If I play this, you're in such dire suspense. All you want is for that leading tone to lead up to the tonic. So that is why it's called the leading tone. Now when we start talking about scales other than the major scale, we can talk about them as transformations of individual scale degrees based on the major scale. The major scale is kind of the fundamental scale. It's the most common scale in Western music. It has kind of the default way of thinking about a scale centered on a certain note. So if we think of other scales as the major scale with certain notes modified, that can help us very quickly know what these other scales are rather than memorizing a whole new set of whole and half steps. So minor scales are scales whose 3rd scale degree is lowered by a half step in comparison to a major scale. So if we look at our C major scale, we're going to take scale degree 3, which is E natural, and we're going to lower it by using a flat. And now we have E flat. There's C, there's E, there's C, there's E flat. And it's called minor because that creates a minor third above the tonic, which when you create a chord, will create a minor chord built on the tonic note. Now minor scales, in the first 5 notes, which we can call the minor pentachord, are otherwise the same as major scales. So the main difference between a minor scale and a major scale is that scale degree 3 is a half step lower than it is in the major scale. Our whole and half step sequence therefore becomes whole, half, whole, whole, instead of whole, whole, half, whole. Whole, half, whole, whole. Now, the other part of the scale, scale degrees 5, 6, 7, and 8, is a little bit funky in minor scales because the 6th and 7th degrees are essentially variable. In particular, each of them has 2 versions. They have the version that is like the major scale, which we can think of as the raised version, or they have a lowered version. So here, this A, you can have an A or an A flat. B can have a B natural or a B flat. And I'm going to put these in parentheses to show that there are 2 versions of 6 and 7. So now looking at the whole scale, you can see that minor scales have 4 of the same notes as major scales. 1, 2, 4, and 5. Those are not going to change between a major scale and a minor scale. And then the other 3 notes, 3 and 6 and 7, are going to change maybe. So let's talk about the different kinds of minor scales involving 6 and 7. Minor scales with lowered 6 and 7 are called natural minor scales. So in C minor, we would have E flat, A flat, and B flat, with all other notes being natural. Minor scales with lowered 6 but raised 7, so a lowered 6 and then a 7 that is the same as it was in a major scale, is called a harmonic minor scale. So C harmonic minor would have an A flat and then a B natural. And finally, minor scales with a raised 6 and a raised 7 are called melodic minor scales. Now the melodic minor scale is a little bit weird because the word melodic indicates it's for melodies. So what we actually do when we think of a melodic minor scale is we think of it as something that has a raised 6 and 7 going up and then a lowered 6 and 7 coming down. And that's because when you raise things, they tend to push the melody upward. And when you lower them, they tend to bring the melody downward. So the melodic minor scale is reflecting those melodic tendencies for raised notes to go up and lowered notes to go down. So in other words, the melodic minor scale has that raised 6 and 7 going up and then is just like the natural minor scale going down. There's one more possible combination of 6 and 7, and that's to have the raised 6 and the lowered 7. That's called the Dorian scale, and we actually think of that as a diatonic mode more than a tonal scale. There's a historical reason for that. It might not be as important a distinction in recent popular musics, but it's just a good thing to know. So raised 6, lower 7 is called Dorian. Now what if you're asked to write a minor scale? Let's say you're asked to write an F natural minor scale. As with the major scales, you're going to want to start with your pentachord, your first 5 notes. And you're going to know that it's going to have the same notes as the major scale with a lowered third scale degree. So if you think as your major scale, you recognize that there's a B flat, and this F, G, A, B flat, C has your whole half from your major scale. Now for your minor scale, you're just going to take that third scale degree and lower it by making it an A flat. Right. Now, the natural minor, you're going to remember, has lowered 6 and lowered 7. So you're going to start from C and go up with a half step, whole step, whole step. And then if someone says, well, now I want to turn that natural minor scale into a melodic minor scale going up, you can say, oh, I don't need to rewrite that whole scale. All I need to do is change 6 and 7 from D flat and E flat to D natural and E natural.